The day my son told me I get nothing from a $25 million will was the day he lost everything. I didn't know that yet. All I knew was my phone was ringing, and the name on the screen was one I hadn't seen in 5 years. Victor. For a second, I just stared at it. 5 years of silence. No birthdays. No holidays. Not even when his mother got sick. And now, he was calling. I should have let it ring. But I didn't. I answered. I hope you're not planning to come tomorrow. No hello. No hesitation. Just that. His voice hadn't changed. Still sharp. Still cold. Still carrying that same quiet arrogance his mother used to wear like perfume. I didn't say anything. I wanted to hear where this was going. The will reading is at 10 a.m. Davies and Coleman, he continued. But honestly, you just embarrass yourself. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something else. Something familiar. I'm calling to save you the trouble, he said. Everything is mine. A pause. Then he added it. Slowly, deliberately, all $25 million. The number hung there, heavy, final, like a door being slammed shut. I looked around my workshop without thinking. Steel racks, worn tools, machines humming in the background. This place smelled like oil and heat and time. 5 years of rebuilding something after losing everything. And in one sentence, my son had just reduced it to nothing. I just figured you shouldn't get your hopes up, Victor went on. Wouldn't want you sitting there in your little machine shop thinking you still matter. That word hit exactly where he aimed it. Little. I built a company from a rented garage, turned it into a multi-million-dollar operation. And now, my own son was talking to me like I was a failure he outgrew. I leaned back against the workbench, gripping the edge just slightly. Still calm, still listening. The house in Riverside? Mine. The investment accounts? Mine. Martinez Precision Manufacturing. He let out a small breath of satisfaction. Mine. There it was. Not just money. Not just assets. My life's work. Handed over like it never belonged to me in the first place. Why would you even show up? He added. You enjoy being humiliated? I closed my eyes for a brief second, and in that moment, I realized something. He believed it. Every word, every insult, every assumption. He thought this was over. I'll be there, I said. Silence. Then a quiet laugh. Low, amused, almost disappointed I didn't break. Suit yourself, Victor replied. Just try not to make it awkward. You're not in the will. The line went dead. The workshop went quiet again, but it didn't feel the same anymore. I stood there for a while, phone still in my hand, waiting for something. Anger, pain, regret. But what came instead was clarity. Cold, steady, unshaken clarity. I set the phone down slowly and walked toward the back of the workshop. There was an old cabinet there, one I hadn't opened in years. Inside was a box, dust-covered, forgotten, or maybe just waiting. I pulled it out and set it on the table. The label was faded, but still readable. Martinez Personal. For a moment, I just looked at it. Then I opened it. The past doesn't knock. It just sits there until you're ready to face it. Inside were photographs. I picked one up. Me and Linda, standing in a cramped garage next to our first CNC machine. We looked unstoppable back then, like two people building something that would last forever. I almost laughed at that. I set the photo down. Underneath were blueprints, pages filled with calculations, measurements, ideas. My ideas. Every system that made that company what it became started right here, on paper, in my handwriting. Linda's name had been on the business, but the foundation, that was mine, always was. At the bottom of the box was the reason I came here, a thick envelope, yellowed with time. I didn't rush this part. Some things deserve patience. I opened it slowly. The divorce decree. 18 years ago. I flipped past the parts that took everything from me. The control, the access, my own son, all signed away in black ink. I kept going until I found it. Page 17. My hand stopped. My eyes didn't move. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled, because buried in all that loss was something they didn't understand, something they didn't take seriously, something they thought didn't matter. A single clause, dismissed, ignored, forgotten, but not by me. I traced a line with my fingers slowly, letting the memories settle in. 18 years. That's how long some truths take to come back. I closed the document gently and looked around the workshop again. Same machines, same silence, same life I had rebuilt from scratch. Victor thought tomorrow was the end. He thought he was walking into a room to claim everything. He had no idea. He was walking into the one mistake his mother should have never signed. And tomorrow, everything changes. People like to think betrayal happens in one moment. It doesn't. It builds quietly over time. And by the time you see it clearly, it's already too late. Back then, there was no company, no office, no millions, just a cramped garage, a second-hand CNC machine, and two people who believed they could build something that mattered. Linda used to stand beside me while I worked, watching, learning, asking questions. She was smart, sharp in a way that made you feel like she saw 5 steps ahead of everyone else. I respected that. I trusted it. We built everything together. At least that's what I believed. The first few years were hard. There were nights we slept in that garage. Days we didn't know if we'd make payroll. I handled the engineering, the designs, the systems that made our work different. Linda handled the front, clients, investors, growth. We were a perfect balance. Or at least it looked that way. Victor was 10 when things started changing. Subtle at first. Linda began taking more meetings alone. Investors prefer a single point of contact, she told me once. It made sense. So I didn't question it. Not then. Then came the first real shift. A meeting I wasn't invited to. A deal I hadn't reviewed. A contract already signed. I remember asking her about it that night. She smiled. Said, "You worry too much. I've got it handled." And I believed her, because that's what you do when you trust someone. You ignore the small things until they're not small anymore. By the time Victor turned 12, the company had outgrown the garage. We moved into a proper facility, hired staff, expanded operations. From the outside, it looked like success. Inside, things were changing fast. Linda started correcting me in meetings, cutting me off mid-sentence, rephrasing my ideas as if they were hers. At first, I thought it was just pressure, stress, but then I started noticing something else. Victor, watching, listening, learning who to admire and who to dismiss. "Your father is brilliant with machines," Linda told him once. I remember that clearly. She said it with a smile, but then she added, "But business is a different kind of intelligence." Victor nodded, and in that moment, I saw it, the shift, small, quiet, but permanent. It didn't stop there. Linda started taking Victor to meetings, introducing him to clients, letting him sit in rooms I was slowly being edged out of. Exposure, she called it, preparing him for the future. But it wasn't preparation, it was positioning. By the time Victor was 15, he had already started speaking to me differently, less like a son, more like someone evaluating me, judging, measuring, and slowly losing respect. The arguments with Linda became more frequent, then louder, then colder, until one night, everything broke. "You're holding the company back." She said it calmly, like she had rehearsed it. We were in the kitchen, Victor upstairs, listening, whether we realized it or not. "I built the core of this company," I told her. "Without the systems I designed, there is no business." She didn't even hesitate. "You built the beginning," she replied. "I'm building the future." That was the moment, the line in the sand. The divorce came fast after that. Too fast. Like it had already been planned. Lawyers, documents, deadlines. I was outmaneuvered before I even understood the game we were playing. Linda's legal team was aggressive, precise, expensive. Every clause was written to strip control. Every agreement tilted in her favor. I was fighting to hold on to something I didn't even realize I had already lost. And Victor chose her. That part didn't happen in court. There was no document for it. No signature. Just a look. A quiet decision. He stood beside her, not me, and that was enough. The final agreement gave Linda operational control of the company. I kept the technical advisory role on paper. But in reality, I was already being pushed out. Slowly. Deliberately. There was one moment I still remember clearly. Her lawyer, expensive suit, confident smile, flipping to the final draft. I had added something. A clause. Small. Specific. Easy to overlook. He glanced at it once, then shook his head. "This is unnecessary," he said. "Sentimental at best." Linda didn't even read it. She just signed, impatient, focused on moving forward. They both thought it didn't matter. I didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't fight for it. I just let it stay there. Quiet, buried, waiting. After the divorce, everything changed faster than I expected. My access to systems was reduced, then restricted, then removed. Meetings stopped including me. Decisions were made without me. Projects I designed continued without my input. And Victor? He didn't just allow it. He enforced it. Security access downgraded. Emails unanswered. Doors closed. Not slammed, just closed. Slowly enough to feel intentional. 5 years. That's how long it took for them to erase me from the company I built. 5 years of watching something I created become something I wasn't allowed to touch. Until I finally walked away. Not because I wanted to, but because there was nothing left to hold on to. That's when I built this workshop. From scratch. Again, smaller, simpler, but honest. And now, after all these years, Victor thought he had won. Thought everything his mother built was his to inherit. But what he never understood was that the foundation he was standing on was never fully his. And tomorrow, he was finally to find out why. That night, I didn't sleep, not because I was nervous, but because I needed to remember. The workshop was quieter than usual. No machines running, no sparks, just silence and the sound of paper turning. The old documents were spread across my workbench. Blueprints, patent drafts, early contracts. Every piece of proof that Martinez Precision didn't start in a boardroom. It started in my hands. I picked up one of the original design sheets. Edges worn, corners folded. My handwriting still clear after all these years. Every measurement exact. Every calculation intentional. Back then, I wasn't thinking about ownership, or control, or legal protection. I was thinking about building something that worked, something that lasted. Funny how the things that last are never the things you expect. I reached for the divorce decree again. The paper felt fragile now, like time itself had settled into it. Page 17. I didn't need to search for it anymore. I knew exactly where it was. I read the clause again, slowly, carefully, not because I didn't understand it, but because I needed to feel it. Every word, every condition, every consequence. 18 years. That's how long it had sat there, ignored, dismissed, waiting. But even then, there was a question, a small one, quiet but persistent. What if it doesn't hold? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Legal language changes. Interpretations shift. People find ways around things. Victor wasn't a kid anymore. He had lawyers, resources, time, and for a brief moment, I let myself consider it. The possibility that tomorrow nothing would happen, that I'd walk into that room and walk out exactly the way Victor expected. Empty. I exhaled slowly, not fear, just reality. Then I looked back at the table, at the evidence, the emails I had printed over the years, the access logs I had quietly requested, the notes I kept, even when no one was listening. I hadn't been waiting blindly. I had been watching, documenting, preparing. 5 years of being pushed out, and 5 years of proof that it wasn't accidental. I picked up one printed email. Victor's name at the top. A meeting about a system I designed. A meeting I wasn't invited to. I remember that day, standing outside a conference room. Hearing my own work being discussed, like I didn't exist. Another document. Security access changes. Restrictions applied to areas I built. Signed off by Victor. Another. Employee statements. People who saw what was happening, but couldn't say out loud back then. I stacked the papers together slowly. Not rushed. Not anxious. Just ready. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me not to. I answered. Carl. The voice was familiar. Older. Careful. Yeah. It's Daniel from the old team. I sat up slightly. Daniel had been one of the few who stayed neutral back then. Didn't take sides. Didn't get involved. What's going on? I asked. There was a pause. Then he spoke. They're talking about tomorrow. Of course they were. They think it's over, he added. Victor's been telling people he's taking full control. I let that sit. That's what he believes. I said. Another pause. Longer this time. Carl. Daniel continued, his voice lower now. You sure you want to walk into that room? That question again. Different voice. Same meaning. I've seen how this goes, he said. People like Victor, they don't lose quietly. I almost smiled. I'm not asking him to. I replied. Silence. Then, you always were stubborn. Not stubborn, I said. Just patient. Daniel let out a quiet breath. Well, whatever happens tomorrow. Another pause. Some of us haven't forgotten who built that place. That one landed. Not heavy. Just real. Thanks, I said. The call ended. I sat there for a while after that. Not thinking. Not planning. Just still. Then I stood up and walked to the sink. Washed the oil and dust from my hands. Slowly. Deliberately. Like I was preparing for something more than just a meeting. I went home, opened the closet, and pulled out a suit I hadn't worn in years. Still fit, still sharp, still mine. I hung it up where I could see it, then sat on the edge of the bed. The room was quiet, darker now. Tomorrow wasn't about money. It wasn't even about the company. Not really. It was about something simpler. Something most people overlook. Respect. I lay back and stared at the ceiling. And for the first time that night, I closed my eyes. Morning would come. The room would be filled. The documents would be read. Victor would smile, thinking he had already won. And then everything would shift, because buried in a decision they made 18 years ago was a mistake they never saw coming. And tomorrow, it finally gets exposed. Morning came cold. Gray sky. Still air. The kind of morning that doesn't ask questions, it just waits. Davies and Coleman sat inside a glass tower downtown. Polished marble floors. Quiet elevators. Everything designed to make people feel small before they even spoke. I stepped inside wearing a suit I hadn't touched in years. Clean. Fitted. Familiar. Not for them. For me. The receptionist barely looked up before giving a practiced smile. Mr. Martinez? I nodded. She gestured toward a hallway. This way, please. The walk felt longer than it was. Framed portraits lined the walls. Old partners. Old power. Men who had built careers out of other people's conflicts. At the end of the hall, a set of glass doors. She opened them. The room was already occupied. Victor sat at the head of the table. Charcoal suit. Perfect posture. Scrolling through his phone like none of this mattered. Like it was already done. He didn't look up immediately. And when he did, it wasn't surprise. It was irritation. You actually came. No greeting. No respect. Just annoyance that I hadn't followed the script he wrote in his head. I didn't respond. I took a seat. Calm. Uninvited, but not unwelcome. The lawyer stood near the window. Terry Coleman. Mid-60s. Sharp eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. The kind of man who didn't waste words. Because he didn't need to. Mr. Martinez, he said, extending his hand. I shook it. Firm. Measured. Victor scoffed quietly. I told you he didn't need to be here, he said, not even looking at me. This is straightforward. Coleman didn't react. Didn't correct him. Didn't agree either. He simply walked to the table and opened a blue-bound folder. All relevant parties were invited, he said calmly. Then he added, relevant in different ways. Victor's eyes flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. Let's begin. The room settled. Quiet. Still. Coleman started reading. Linda's voice through legal language. A carefully written version of her life. Her success. Her vision. I listened, not reacting, not interrupting, just listening. My first husband. That's how I was introduced. One sentence. A footnote in a story I helped build. Victor shifted slightly, smiling, enjoying it. Then came the assets. The residence in Riverside. Victor's smile widened. The investment portfolio valued at $4 million. He leaned back slightly, relaxed, comfortable. The brokerage accounts. More numbers, more confirmation, more certainty. Each line fed his confidence. Each word made him stronger. I didn't move, didn't react, didn't give him anything. Coleman turned another page. Jewelry collection. To my son, Victor Martinez. Safe deposit contents. To my son, Victor Martinez. Remaining financial holdings. To my son, Victor Martinez. Over and over. The same ending. The same outcome. Victor stopped even pretending now. He wasn't just confident. He was satisfied. This wasn't a reading anymore. This was a coronation. Then Coleman reached the final page. And to conclude, his voice slowed slightly. Measured. Intentional. The remainder of my estate, including all shares and controlling interest in Martinez Precision Manufacturing. Victor straightened. This was it. I give and bequeath to my beloved son, Victor Martinez. There it was. The crown, to be his absolutely and forever. Silence. Victor exhaled slowly, like he'd just been handed the world. Then he stood up, not fully, just enough to make a statement. Well, he said, turning toward me, I guess that's it. A small smile, controlled, polished. Thanks for coming, Carl. Not Dad. Not anymore. I know this must be hard for you. There it was, the final insult, dressed as sympathy. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't see my son. I saw someone who thought power meant ownership, someone who believed control couldn't be challenged, someone who had no idea what was about to happen. Victor adjusted his cuff slightly, ready to leave, ready to move on. But Coleman didn't close the folder. He didn't stand, didn't signal the end. Instead, he reached down beside his chair and placed something else on the table. A different folder. Old, faded, edges worn from time. Victor's movement stopped. Mid-motion. What's that? He asked. Coleman rested his hand lightly on it. Calm, unhurried. There is one additional matter to address. The room shifted. Subtle, but undeniable. Victor frowned. The will is done, he said. That's everything. Coleman looked at him, not challenging, not defensive, just certain. The will, he said, addresses personal assets. A pause, but not everything tied to the company. Victor's expression changed, slightly, not fear, not yet, confusion. What do you mean? He asked. Coleman untied the string on the old folder, slowly, deliberately. Your mother's estate is valid, he continued. However, he opened the file. The company is not entirely hers to give. Silence. Victor blinked. Once. What are you talking about? Coleman didn't answer immediately. He turned a page, adjusted his glasses, then looked up, and for the first time that morning, he smiled. Not broadly, not emotionally, but enough to tell the truth without saying it yet. Mr. Martinez, he said calmly, we need to revisit something from 2006. Victor froze, and just like that, the room no longer belonged to him. The room didn't move, but everything in it changed. Victor let out a short, forced laugh. 2006? He said. That was a divorce. He shook his head slightly. That has nothing to do with this. Coleman didn't respond immediately. He turned a page in the old document. Calm, precise, like a man who had done this hundreds of times. On the contrary, he said quietly, it has everything to do with this. Victor's jaw tightened. You're saying something from almost 20 years ago overrides her will? Coleman looked up. No, he said. I'm saying it was never removed. Silence. Victor glanced at me, just for a second, as if expecting me to say something. I didn't. Coleman adjusted his glasses. Page 17, he said, paragraph 4. I didn't need to look. I already knew it. Every word. Victor leaned forward, impatient now. What is it? He demanded. Coleman began to read. Although Mr. Carl Martinez relinquishes operational control of Martinez Precision Manufacturing. Victor rolled his eyes slightly. I already know this part. Coleman didn't stop. His founding stake shall not be dissolved. Victor's expression shifted. Small, barely noticeable, but instead placed into a dormant trust. The room grew quieter, representing 49% of total company shares. Victor blinked, to be automatically reactivated and transferred back to Mr. Carl Martinez. Victor sat up straighter now. Upon the death of Linda Martinez, silence, provided that two conditions are met. No one spoke. No one moved. Victor's voice came out lower now. Tighter. What conditions? Coleman closed the document slightly. Not all the way. Just enough to shift the moment. The first condition, he said, is that the company must exceed a market valuation of $20 million at the time of Mrs. Martinez's death. Victor let out a quick breath, almost a laugh. That's not a condition, he said. That's already done. Coleman nodded once. Yes, he said. It is... He reached into the blue folder and slid a document across the table. Independent valuation, he continued. Completed last week. Victor looked down. Didn't pick it up immediately. $25 million. The same number he had used to mock me. The first condition, Coleman said, has been satisfied. Victor swallowed. Hard. But that doesn't matter, he said quickly. There were two conditions. Coleman nodded again. Yes. And this time, his voice slowed. The second condition. He opened another folder. Thicker, heavier. Is that Mr. Carl Martinez must have been systematically excluded from company operations. Victor's eyes flickered. For a continuous period of no less than 5 years. The air shifted again, constituting a breach of the founding partnership. Silence. Real silence. Victor didn't speak, didn't move. Coleman placed the second folder on the table, opened it. Inside was everything. Emails, printed, highlighted, meeting records. Coleman said, projects Mr. Martinez originally designed, conducted without his inclusion. Another document. Security logs, he continued. Access privileges reduced, then restricted, then removed. Another. Sworn statements, he added, from employees confirming deliberate exclusion. Each paper landed with a quiet weight. Victor stared at them, not reading, just staring. I watched him, carefully. This wasn't anger. Not yet. This was realization. Every decision, every action, every time he shut me out, it wasn't just control. It was evidence. And now, it was all here. In total, Coleman said calmly, we have documented over 5 consecutive years of systematic exclusion. He closed the folder, which satisfies the second condition. Silence. Then, as of this moment, Victor looked up, slowly. 49% of Martinez Precision Manufacturing. A pause. Legally belongs. Victor's breathing changed. To Mr. Carl Martinez. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed, and everything broke. Victor leaned back in his chair. Too fast. Like something had been pulled out from under him. No, he said, barely audible. Then louder. No, that's not right. He shook his head, over and over. This is a mistake. No one corrected him. This is a setup, he snapped, pointing at me now. You planned this. I didn't respond. You knew about this clause. I wrote it, I said calmly. That stopped him. Silence again. You manipulated her, he continued. desperate now. You tricked her into signing something she didn't understand. Coleman stepped in, measured, controlled. The agreement was reviewed and filed in court in 2006, he said. It has remained valid and enforceable since that time. Victor turned back to him, fighting, looking for anything. I'll challenge it, he said. I'll take this to court. Coleman nodded slightly. You're within your rights to do so. A pause. However, Victor froze. To succeed, Coleman continued, you would need to prove that the company does not meet its current valuation. Victor didn't respond. Or that Mr. Martinez was not excluded from operations. Coleman gestured lightly toward the documents, using records that largely originate from your own directives. That landed harder than anything else. Victor's hand dropped slowly, because he understood this wasn't something done to him. This was something he built himself, piece by piece, decision by decision. And now, it was complete. He sat there, still, silent, and for the first time since I walked into that room, Victor looked small, not because of money, not because of power, but because the truth had finally caught up to him, and there was nowhere left to hide. No one spoke, not immediately. Victor just sat there, staring at the documents like they might change if he looked long enough, like reality could be negotiated. It couldn't. His voice came out rough, unsteady. This isn't over. It wasn't anger anymore. It was desperation. I'll fight this, he said, louder now. I'll drag this through court if I have to. I nodded once, calm, expected. You can, I said. He looked at me, searching, looking for resistance, for fear, for something he could push against. He didn't find it. You can spend years in court, I continued, millions in legal fees. A small pause. You can explain to investors, employees, the public, why you lost control of your own company. That word landed. Public. Victor's jaw tightened. Or, I said quietly, you can accept what's already been decided. Silence again, this time heavier, because now it wasn't about the clause. It wasn't about the documents. It was about choice. Victor looked down at the table, then back at me, and for a brief moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not arrogance, not control. Doubt. What do you want? He asked finally. There it was. Not a demand, not a challenge, a question. I let it sit for a second, then answered, I don't want the company. Victor blinked, confused. What? I have no interest in running it, I said. Not anymore. Coleman glanced at me briefly, not surprised, just aware. Victor leaned forward, trying to understand. Then why? I'm selling my shares. That hit harder than anything else. All of them, I added. Victor's mouth opened slightly. No words came out. You're walking away? He asked. I nodded. I didn't come here to take something back, I said. I came here to finish something. Silence. To remind you, I continued, that what people build matters. Victor didn't move. You don't erase someone, I said. You don't take their work, their time, their life. A pause, and pretend it was never theirs. His eyes dropped, because now he understood. This was never about money. It was about consequence. I gave up control once, I said quietly, but I never gave up what I built. The room stayed still. Coleman closed the folder slowly, not interrupting, not rushing the moment. Once the transfer is finalized, he said, we can proceed with any sale arrangements. I nodded. Then I stood up. No rush, no tension, just done. Victor didn't stop me, didn't argue, didn't threaten, because there was nothing left to fight. At the door I paused, just for a moment. I didn't turn fully, just enough. For what it's worth, I said, I hope you do something better with what you have left. A small pause, something your mother never understood. Then I walked out, and this time, I didn't look back. 3 weeks later, the office was smaller, quieter, no glass walls, no polished marble, just a wooden desk, a window, and sunlight falling across the floor. Outside, kids played in a small park. laughing, running, free. The name on the door read, Martinez Foundation for Innovation Justice. I sat down and looked at the paperwork in front of me. Finalized, signed, complete, every share sold, $12 million. Not kept, not invested, used to build something new, something that couldn't be taken. A foundation dedicated to protecting engineers, builders, and creators from being pushed out of the very things they create. No boardroom politics. No quiet takeovers. No erased names. Just fairness. Just truth. I leaned back slightly in the chair, letting the silence settle in. 18 years ago, I lost everything. Or at least, that's what I thought. What I actually lost was illusion, and what I gained took time to reveal itself. Respect doesn't come from titles, or money, or control. It comes from what you build, and what you refuse to let be taken from you. Victor got his inheritance, just not the one he expected. And me? I didn't get revenge. I got something better. If this story touched your heart, like and subscribe for more powerful stories of courage, justice, and unexpected reversals. And don't forget, comment where you're watching from. Your support helps keep these stories coming.